I can't tell you how proud and excited I am for you to actually witness this tool that has truly changed the way that many photographers have worked. Especially myself, I'm not really good at color toning, and I'll be honest, this is something that I'm excited about because, as you can see from this example shot by my wife, Bella Kotak, who's a fine art photographer, I was able to create color grade within actually just a minute. And this is something so complex because I was able to actually stack 3 different looks that the panel gave me automatically to create something so beautiful. And I'll be honest, if I had to do this manually or explain to someone how to actually come up with this color grade, I wouldn't know what to do. But the beauty of this panel is based on the visual output that it shows me. I know exactly what I like and don't like, and then I can guide it and get closer to what I'm going for. And that's what I want to show you today. Let me go and hide this group for a second and start from scratch. The way this panel works is actually really simple. We have a create button in the center of it, and then we have a few different options. Now, the few different options here at the bottom are the layers that the panel itself generates. So you can see it says curves, color balance, selective color, gradient map, and color lookup, which means when I hit the create button, you can see that on the adjustment layers themselves, you can see the group called infinite color. And within the group itself, we have curves, color balance, selective color, gradient map, and color lookup. Very similarly, or exactly I should say, to the names of the layers on the panel. And this is important because now, instead of using the layer stack itself to turn the layers on and off, we can actually come over to the panel itself and independently turn on and off each of the layers within the color grade that it produced. And this is good, I think, because it keeps your layer stack really nice and efficient, and you don't have to even use the layer stack anymore. Let's say, for example, there is something that you would like to redo again. Perhaps I'm going to go through each of these names and turn them on and off. And this is good because it allows you to see and learn exactly which layer is doing what in the color grade. And you can see, wait a second, you know what? Selective color is actually the one doing a lot of the work when it comes to adjusting these greens to this darker magenta-ish, bluish look. I can't even explain it. And let me just rephrase this. We developed this panel because, these settings themselves that each of these adjustment layers has, they are intentionally created and the parameters are set so that all these layers themselves interact in a way that creates beautiful color tones every time you use the create button. It's not just a randomization tool. It's like these layers are playing in harmony to create a symphony that is specific to analysis that I've done on my layers every time I've come up with color grades for editorial and commercial work. It's almost like a blueprint of color grading at your fingertips. That's really important. Let's take a look at some of the other settings that this has as well. Like I mentioned before, maybe you have, selective color, which seems to be doing quite a lot of work here on this color grade. Maybe you want to randomize it again. You can shuffle just that specific layer. So it's almost like a create button for these individual layers. That way you don't have to hit create every single time to redo everything. It makes it super easy for you. Last but not least, we have an intensity slider on this home page here. And that's because if you are working on images that are shadows dominant or highlight dominant, it should have different intensities, right? Shadows tend to pick up a lot of color, and it tends to shift a lot more when you adjust color, which is why shadowy images, they're very cinematic, tend to have a lot of colors attached to it that are very visible, I should say. And personally, I recommend to keep the intensity slider actually quite low and then hit the create button to begin with, because then you get a more nuanced look. You get colors that are more suited to the image, and it gives you better control over the direction it will go. If you're someone like me and who would like just to, a little taste of the way the colors are going to be modified, then a low intensity is a good way to go, because then you can see subtle shifts and slight shifts, because then you can also build off each other. Now, we also have some of the settings here. If I right click on create, you're going to see I can change the name of it. I can change the group color. As you can see, for me, I have a gray color here, which is why the group is set to gray. You can also change it to orange or red, but this will only take an effect the next time you hit the create button. So keep that in mind. I can call this toning if I want to, whatever it is that you normally call it. Next, I have a group opacity, which is something that I have set to 50. But by default, you will have yours set to 100, but it may be too intense. I have found a lot of people who use the panel tend to set the group opacity somewhere between 25 to 50 off the bat, and that's a good thing to remember. Again, we wanted these settings there so that depending on how intense or minimal you like to color grade, you have full control over it and how the panel responds to you. So don't be scared in case the colors are too intense or not intense enough. It gives you the option to do that. Finally, we have the option to have a group mask. So you see here, it has a white mask. This is really great for making sure that, colors might not impact the dress as much. Maybe this is something that you think is important. You would like to have the dress stay with the true authentic colors of the designer that they intended. Or maybe you don't want the colors to contaminate the skin. So I'll just roughly and terribly show you how I do that. So you can see with a black brush, I've selected the white mask, and now I'm going over the skin. So now it doesn't impact the skin and the dress. And I think that actually looks really good. The magenta of these leaves here tend to blend really nicely with the dress. And this is the best part about the panel, is I don't really know how to color grade the best way. Or for example, I don't know what direction this image should go in. But because I've hit the infinite color a few times, I've been able to see a variety of potential with the image. And now visually it just looks good. For me, I know when something looks good, but I don't necessarily know what that's going to be before I start color grading. So we're going in a circle here, but you can see how we have been able to use the tool to complement what we are going for or what the potential this image has, right? Finally, we have always on top, which means that the group itself is always going to stay on top of your layer stack. This is good because if you are working on retouching and you have a ton of different layers going on, you want the color grade to be at the end. So it doesn't stay underneath any skin tone adjustments or any other curves or anything going on. It has its place and you know exactly where it's going to be. So that's cool. Now, once I go back, and speaking of nuanced color, we can actually stack these color grades. So if you remember, the initial color grade that I did here, you'll see 3 different infinite color groups. This is super easy to do now. And let's say that, let me turn off my color grade stack here. Let's say that I have this color grade that we did, super nuanced. I like the way that it's going, but now I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of more color grades. I'll increase the intensity here just a little bit. And what I'll do is before I hit create, I want to hold Option on my keyboard on a Mac, or if you're on a PC, you're going to hit Alt. And with that pressed down, I'm going to hit create again. And you can see here, I have my new infinite color group with it set to the name that I have adjusted in the settings, as well as the group color and the opacity. So I'll reduce the intensity again, but this time maybe I'll just keep curves and selective color on. And I actually really like that a lot. I really like that. I'm just going to do one more for kicks and giggles. I'm going to hold Option and click on create again and just see what different tones I like. So with that group being set, I'm just going to keep on hitting create without the Option button selected so I can shuffle through and get these variants. That's super interesting actually. And this will obviously change based on who you are, but I think that looks really good. And another thing to note is that these different options that I'm stacking is just a way for me to possibly create variants, different variants of whatever I've created. Maybe I already like the first group we created, and these additional ones are just variants and minimal adjustments to what we've done before. So you can use it in that way too. Another way that you can use it is that you can just keep on stacking, and the more complex your layers are, the more intricate and unique the results are. So it's totally up to you. And I have noticed this because a lot of people that use infinite color tend to stack these different color groups to create intricate tones. And I'm just in love with it. And I hope you are too. Finally, the panel itself has memory. So for example, let's say I click on the toning group on top and then come back to infinite color. You'll see over here that the panel itself remembers that we only had curves and selective color on, as well as the intensity. Now, if I come back to the base one, infinite color, and I come over here, you'll see it remembers that it had everything on, as well as the intensity. This is great because every time you're trying to modify the group, for example, you really should know, how much intensity there was and what layers were on, so you can modify accordingly, and you can shuffle the layers independently and so forth. So the magic that that group created for you can be replicated if you hit create again, or if you hit shuffle or whatever. So I think that's really cool.